Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menasce. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of real estate investing. Today is no exception. We have a great guest all the way from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to the show, Mark Kenney.
Victor, good to see you. It's been quite a while.
It has. Well, Mark, you and I have known each other for, I was doing the math before we got recording, I want to say 8 years now, which is amazing to me. We've traveled and met up all kinds of places all over the world, warm and sunny and cold and rainy.
For sure.
And boy, so much has happened since we spoke last. Would love to dive into some perspective. But before we do, maybe give a little bit of your backstory and how you got to this point in your journey.
For sure. Thanks for having me on, Victor. I really appreciate it. Definitely colder up in your neck of the woods than mine typically. So I enjoy the heat. But I grew up in Michigan, one of 7 kids. Went to college and started buying small multifamily when I was a senior in college with my identical twin brother. Became a CPA, did IT consulting, and continued to buy small properties for a number of years with my wife, Tamil. And then 2013, actually had never heard of syndication before. So it was my first exposure to it and started getting involved in syndication, just a fancy word for raising money from various people to buy larger assets. In our case, it's multifamily. And since then, we've been able to do, maybe 14,000, actually more than that, I guess now, but quite a few units, 14 states, $1.5 billion, and just kind of different areas across the country, mostly in the Southeast Texas as well.
Fabulous. Well, it's been wonderful watching your journey. You've certainly scaled it up to a fairly high level. That comes with it both great opportunity and great responsibility, especially in today's environment. What has the last 12 to 18 months taught you?
Yeah, definitely have some hard lessons learned, if you want to say, but even going back a little bit further during the midst of COVID, what I learned during that, I bring it up because it's pretty important, in my opinion, people looking to buy real estate, in particular multifamily. We saw that, the so-called landlord-friendly states was a misnomer. We had landlord-friendly counties, and we had counties that were not landlord-friendly. So even today, 2023, we have some properties in the state of Georgia, for example, taking 9 to 12 months to evict. And we have other properties in the state of Georgia that take, a couple months to evict. And it's really a function of the local judges and how they, want to be either landlord friendly or tenant friendly. And unfortunately, there are certain areas of the country where I'm never going back to regardless. Could change over time. And then more recently, if you want to say in the last, 9 months or so, we sold a lot of deals and we bought a lot of deals, and we've done, agency debt, Fannie, Freddie, which people also believe that that's always a fixed rate, which is not the case either. You can have floating rate on Fannie and Freddie, just like you can any other debt. We've done a lot of bridge debt. We've done a lot of the huge value add deals, properties that were down to 0% occupied, 20, 30% occupied. And frankly, while you can do really well with those, and we did in most every case, also a lot of headaches with those properties and a lot of things where you kind of have this notion where you'll come in and re-tenant the property and you'll make it secure by putting fences and gates up and things like that. And unless you're going to buy several blocks, you're going to have a hard time doing that. So it's very, very hard, in my personal opinion, to transition a property that has a bad reputation and in a bad market. If you want to say from a crime standpoint, we've had situations where vandals have come in and caused $1 million of damage, for example, on a property that we own. So definitely learned that, and I'd rather get some less risky properties with lower returns on average. It's going to be lower, but less risk, less headache. And then on the debt side, there's no question that debt has been a big factor. And, we've seen it before. I mean, in 08 and 09, we saw a big thing with debt causing a problem. But in a lot of areas across the country, we're in 14 states. We will not continue to be in 14 states going forward because some of the states have a triple whammy. You have the debt market we have no control over, unfortunately. We have high property taxes, which is a little ironic right now. I own multiple properties here in Texas. I'm like, how could it possibly be my taxes are going up this year? It's just kind of crazy, right? And then the third piece is some parts of the country with insurance cost. This is a real example. We have a property in South Texas that was $600,000 for insurance, larger property. And then 1 year on the renewal, it went to $3.6 million.
Wow.
3.6. And I can tell you, there's no operator in the world that can make a $3 million expense work. So we worked with the bank a little bit to kind of get that down much, much further than they want. And we said, just it's not possible to make this deal work. So they're not always going to agree with you. But so those are certain things we learned in parts of the country. And then just from a lending standpoint, people have a conception, if you want to say, oh, this is a perception that this type of debt is bad or this type of debt is good. I would say it's project by project. The one thing that I would recommend people looking at a lender is to really understand the lender. And if the lender is also an operator, meaning if there happened to be a problem and that lender also is an operator where they could say, we're taking your property and we're gladly taking it because we can operate this ourselves. That's much different than a lender that's just a lender and has no operations and they can't really take the property over very easily themselves. It doesn't mean they can't take the property. So those are some lessons learned on the lending side. I've done, over 120 multifamily loans, so a lot. And I've refined a lot who I'm going to be doing business with in the future and who I'm not, and how they treated us during certain times. A lot of them are not your partner, unfortunately. And you think they're nice guys, a lot of them aren't nice guys, and some are, but very few are, unfortunately. So those are a lot of things, and you can do certain things on insurance. Like we've done some things. We're bringing in a management company. They have their master insurance policy, which is something we're looking at doing now, which basically combines it across all properties. We have one deal. We got it down $470,000 a year on the insurance. So there are definitely some ways to help navigate this, but it's rocky waters out there, if you want to say. I know you like to sail, and we're navigating it, but there's no question that I like the previous market better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that happens in any business is the vast majority of management attention doesn't necessarily go to handling the normal case. It goes towards managing those exceptions and managing, putting out those fires, if you will. And I'm sure that's the case in your business as well. To what an extent are you finding that you're able to handle that rate of incoming? Are you experiencing overwhelm even just on a day-to-day basis? I mean, even if you put aside the severity of the issues, are you able to manage that rate of incoming issues?
Somehow that's all I deal with. 95% of what I deal with really are issues. And this is a weird year because everything is down, right? And volume for inventory, new deals down. And then we've been in a hiring spree basically on our side. So, probably weird timing for that, but we're doing it on purpose for certain reasons. And we're getting, asset managers, for example, that all they focus is on asset management. They don't go find deals. They don't raise capital, 100% dedicated, which frankly, I wish we would have done a couple of years ago. We didn't, can look back and, try to turn the clock back and say, I wish we would have done that, but we can make better decisions going forward. The rate of issues I deal with, I think is for the average person, I'm not just saying it probably would be a little overwhelming, and probably people, he said, either would be alcoholic, which I don't drink, or in a mental institution, which I'm not there either. But I think part of it really is a couple aspects. One, I'm older now too, so you look at things a little bit different in the grand scheme of things. If you have health and you have, family members are healthy, I'm not just saying that to say it. That's a big important thing to me. Yes, there's financial aspects to all of this. We have good advisors, so people we've known for years, whether you believe in prayer or not. I do, frankly, and with people that pray for us and our business and things like that. But my level of stress, although it's higher than it was, it's not nearly like it probably should be for an average person. And I, used to do consulting as well as you're in IT, Victor, and I used to work, no joke, 90 plus hours a week. I had projects all over the world. And there's a lot of stress involved with that. Not good, but I can tell you it does get you to be able to handle stress better when you're dealing with, $500 million projects and something's going wrong with it. That's a pretty big deal. So And then I just have routines. I don't miss workouts. I went years and years without working out, but now it's something that I need for my mental break, and I do it every day without exception. There's no exception. So I'm able to incorporate a few things, personally, that have helped me. But it can be overwhelming sometimes. And I've put personally way more money into deals right now to help float deals than I want to, more than most people would make in 10 lifetimes. But at some point in time that runs out too. So I'm doing everything I possibly can to try to help navigate it, consulting people that have other perspectives, that I've known for a number of years, that wanted us to be successful, that again pray for us and things like that. But it can be tough for sure. I look at it going, there's no question real estate's going back up again. 100% guarantee that. When? I don't know. And nobody else does either. You and I run around some circles too, where there's a lot of projections that go on, and a lot of them are wrong. And they can look back 10 years later and say, I'm right now, which I get that. I look at it as what can we control and what can't we control? And I try to focus on the things we can control.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there's no question in my mind as well that this is a difficult period, one that there is light at the end, out at the other side of it. It's a matter of not getting upside down in the interim and making sure that the wheels don't fall off the bus. So I imagine you've got to be focusing to some extent on deleveraging and making sure that you have sufficient cash flow, because cash flow is really what drives this business.
It is. And a lot of the deals don't cash flow because historically we bought a lot of deals that were distressed.
Right.
So there really was an intention to be cash flow positive for a while, which makes it tougher. But I would say in the absence of cash flow, lesson learned, have more reserves than you think you need. And I can tell you, we've had less reserves at a number of deals than I wish we had. And the first big issue potentially was around COVID. Now, fortunately, it was kind of a blip for multifamily. It really was. It was a couple months and everything was back to normal. We were selling properties for more than we were selling them before COVID. It's just kind of crazy. But you definitely want to have your working capital. You want to make sure you have contingency for your CapEx. Another lesson learned, people say, how much? I didn't know, pick a number, 20%, 10% is too low. 30% is probably too high. So we're trying to go with about 20% right now. But we do full due diligence and everything like that. But, you do a lot of development. You get surprised on things. We buy some buildings that are older. We get surprised on things. And there's a big difference between doing due diligence today and taking a property over in 90 or 120 days and then rehabbing some of those units 6 months later. They can look a little different after 6 months. Like, again, in the absence of cash flow, which some properties are not cash flowing, it's really having that reserves there. And then understanding interest reserves with a lender where they'll potentially, help cover your mortgage payment either fully or partially, but be very careful on that. I don't know if you've experienced this or not, but some of the lenders are requiring the interest reserves to be backfilled once you get down to a certain dollar amount, but substantially backfilled. And it's like, well, if we had the money, we wouldn't come to you and then 30 days later have to backfill it for $2 million. It makes no sense to have that. So make sure you really understand your lender, your loan docs, and if you have term sheets up front, which is kind of before you kind of really get a loan from a lender, it's meaningless, 100% meaningless. It doesn't matter what they put in there. You're not going to go back to them and argue that, well, you told me this, 90 days ago. It doesn't matter. Understand the loan docs. The lender's never going to lose on a loan doc because they can, I make this statement, true or not, I would guess almost 90% of every loan today could be considered in a non-monetary default by a lender. If you really go through the loan docs, you missed your insurance by one day, default. You missed your mortgage by one day, default. You didn't execute your business plan by category for CapEx, non-monetary default. So lending has definitely proved to be very, very selective now on who we're using for lenders.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, this is obviously a turbulent period for anyone in commercial real estate. And first of all, thank you for being so open and transparent about what is going on in the marketplace. I think there are a lot of people going out on podcasts and just talking about it, how everything is sunshine and unicorns and everything's awesome. And then they're raising capital in that environment too, promoting things where we're thinking like the punch bowl is still at the table, and it's not. So thank you for that. I think there's some powerful messages for our listeners in that. And I know we have many of our listeners are sophisticated investors, with many of whom own thousands of units of apartments. And I think it's helpful for them to know that they're not alone.
Right, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely, like you said, people are ignoring some of the signs out there. And it's not all 100% bad. I mentioned, we are doing some really good refis and some sales and things like that. Those would have been better a year ago. But, in some cases, if you have high bridge debt, for example, right now, and you can do a refi into a deal, a new loan that is just net loan amount. You have $10 million loan, go into a fixed debt at $10 million, no cash refi out, totally fine. My opinion, do that, because to your point earlier, your cash flow, you're cutting your mortgage basically in half by doing that. And there may be cases, very, very few, you might have to sell a property. And, hopefully not at a loss, but it might make sense to sell it just even as a neutral. The example with a $3.6 million insurance. I think we're good overall. Operators, we've done a really good job, but there's nobody that can handle that. It's just not possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard a lot of stories. We've even experienced it ourselves close to the Gulf Coast, where insurance numbers have gone through the roof. I mean, we had a property where we were paying $48,000 a year in insurance, and then the next quote we got after that was $250,000.
Wow.
Those are big multiples. Now we got it negotiated down to the much more reasonable, and I say that with air quotes, $160,000, which sounds like a shocking thing to say.
Oh yeah, still almost 4 times as much, right?
Yeah. But inflation's only 5.6%.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a little off there, but understanding those Gulf markets. I mean, we're there, right? We own a lot in Florida. We own a lot in Texas, and we have a lot of deals in parts of Florida where the insurance costs used to be $500 per unit per year. Now, $2,000 to $2,500 per unit per year. That every dollar. It's not just $1 of an extra expense. It's $15 to $20 of lost value if you were trying to sell that property or refi it with a cap rate, conversion on that. So it's pretty impactful.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, if folks want to connect, if they want to learn more, what's the best way?
Just email me. It's Mark, M-A-R-K, at thinkmultifamily.com, or you can visit our website as well, thinkmultifamily.com. More than happy to chat with people. And I'm a straight shooter. I'll tell you straight up. Like you said, everyone thinks everything is rosy. I'm more of the opinion. I do think there are a lot of good opportunities out there, but also I do want to share lessons learned to help prevent people to go through some of the stress and headaches that we've gone through in the past.
Love it. Well, thank you, Mark. Thanks for sharing your perspective. And for the listeners at home, definitely connect with Mark at thinkmultifamily.com. That link will be in the show notes. And in the meantime, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.